Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to the Seattle Angel Conference Workshop Series. Tonight, we're having an interesting conversation with Janine and several people who have been investing for a while, and we're going to learn some more about that. Angels from Venus. Janine has been part of my startup investing journey as I was part of the Seattle Impact Investors group. And that group was very thoughtful about thinking about the intersection between investing and the process of impact and what that meant in various asset classes. I thought that process was fabulous. And I've been very impressed with her approach to how she's approaching her understanding of investing. And I'm really excited to see the conversation tonight. So Janine, could you take it away?
I certainly will. So first of all, thanks to both of the Johns for having us here to talk to you. We're going to talk about tonight. This is a fairly sophisticated group. There are a lot of investors here already. There are also a lot of entrepreneurs. And I think that, we pick the title of this session, Angels from Venus, purposely. Some of you may know that book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, or the other way around, Men Are From Venus and Women Are From Mars. I don't remember. But I actually think that women angels invest differently than men angels. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And your opinions and points of view on that would be very welcome. I also really welcome you to put questions in the chat. If you have questions, I will be checking that as we go. Basically, the way we were thinking about spending our time is that I will introduce the other three women who are going to be speaking with me. We'll tell our stories a little bit, and then I'm going to have a conversation with them, and we can put your questions into that conversation. So that's really the intention of the way forward. As John mentioned, I was part of the Seattle Impact Investors Group. I lived in Seattle from 2012 to 2017 when I was working at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I'm now back in the San Francisco Bay Area where I had been previously. And I've been interested in the idea of investing your money with your values for over a decade now. So I was a kind of a social entrepreneur before that was a term. I started in the mid-1990s working across sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and other parts of the emerging market, looking at how technology could be applied to poverty. And I was realizing that my money was working against me in the goals that I had with my life and the things that I was doing with my life. My financial advisors weren't getting me where I wanted to be. And I had an intention to invest all of my assets, starting with my cash, everything in my public markets, everything I was doing privately, my real estate, you name it. I want to invest it all in a way that is creating a better world. And when I retired, I'm actually supposedly retired. I retired about 4 years ago. I decided that it was too hard to learn this information. And so I wrote a book. And so those of you who are getting started, this is my book. It's called Activate Your Money, Invest to Grow Your Wealth and Build a Better World. And it's written for women because women have been left out of this financial conversation for a very long time. And so the book is dedicated to women. It speaks to women, and it teaches us how to invest our money in ways that are meaningful. What we're talking about tonight, I mean, one of the things I think that happens for a lot of women, and I don't think it's so much the case here because a lot of the women on this call are already angels, but for a vast majority of us, the whole idea of private investing isn't even something that is on the radar when we go and talk to our financial advisors. They're putting us into cash, fixed income, and the public equities market. They aren't even talking to us about private angel investing. So it's great that there are women who are getting interested in, and we need to bring more women into this because there is a dearth on both the demand side for those of you who are entrepreneurs. The women on this call who are entrepreneurs are going to have a much, much harder time raising capital than the men who are on this call. In fact, last year, well, 2020, I don't know the 2021 numbers, Sylvia might, but in 2020, only 2.2% of all the venture capital funding went to female CEOs, 2.2%. So we really have to change that dynamic, and we have to get more money into the hands of female CEOs and people of color because the numbers there are even worse, particularly for women. The other thing is there's not enough women who are angels because we haven't been trained to do this. We've been taught that investing is hard and scary. We're scared about even putting our money in the stock market, many of us. And so all of us who are female angels really have an opportunity to help bring other women into this. And that's a little bit what we're going to talk about too. So I want to tell you a little bit about the three. So in addition to the book and all I'm doing to put my money to work with my values, I'm also an angel investor. I've been involved in angel investing for about 5 years now. And it's been a great experience, and we'll talk more about that. But before I go there, I'd love to tell you who I have on this conversation with me. So first is Sylvia Ma, who is a fairly extraordinary woman. She has a PhD and an MBA. She also is the founder of an organization called Stella Labs, which is an accelerator for women-owned businesses. She's a founding member of Stella Angels, which is a female angel investment group. And she runs a podcast called She Invests, which highlights the journeys of female angels. And that's just part of what Sylvia does. She's also a mom, which just amazes me. And she and I met because we were both something called lead investors on a fund called the Next Wave Impact Fund. And the Next Wave Impact Fund was a group of 99 women who pooled our money together to invest in female CEOs and socially responsible businesses. And in 4 years, I already have received almost 70% of my investment back. So our fund is doing pretty well so far. The second really interesting woman who I have on this panel is Catherine Gardeaux. So Catherine is a Seattleite, and she is also a registered civil engineer. She's super passionate about the environment, about land use and agriculture. She is currently the chair of the Washington State Public Works Board. So she's doing a lot for you all, people who live in Seattle, around your infrastructure. She's also on the board of the Washington Recreation Conservation Funding Board, and she runs her own consulting firm. So she is also an angel, and Catherine got started in angel investing through the very fund that I just mentioned, the Next Wave Impact Fund, because part of what was very cool about that fund was that it was a learn as you go kind of fund. You put a little bit of money in, and the women who were investors learned how to become angels. And Catherine, I think, took more advantage of that program than virtually any other woman, and she's now doing a lot of angel investing on her own. And the third woman that I'd like to introduce you to, another incredible woman, is Mcnally. She is also based in Seattle, and she is a lawyer, an entrepreneur, and a legal strategist, and she's helping businesses of all sizes be more successful. And then when she realized that females were having a really hard time not only getting money, but having a hard time getting mentorship or support in building their businesses, she started something called the F-Bomb Breakfast Club, so that these women could get together and start talking to each other, empowering each other, supporting each other. And there are now more than 5,000 female founders and business owners who are in that group. So pretty impressive group of women. But I'd like them each to be able to tell you a little bit about their own story of how they became an angel investor, how long they've been an angel, and why they do this. So Sylvia, you've got all kinds of things going on around the angel world. Why don't you kick us off and tell us your story?
Wonderful. Thank you, Janine. And Janine is a leader of leaders, right? So excited to be part of your network, Janine. And thank you, John, John Seacrest, for having us today. And thank you, John, for having us be part of the Seattle Angel Conference. So thank you, Janine, for that wonderful introduction. And I have been an angel investor for about 12 years. And I started in 2010. And I remember my first investment. I had a mentor who was a woman. I went through her class, 37 angels, and loved that I was able to call her up and say, am I going crazy, right? Am I going crazy? Am I going to make the right investment? And she says, if you feel like it's right, out of all the things that you've done as in due diligence, what do you think? I said, I think it's a very, very good decision and a very good investment. what was interesting is that it was like the complete intersection of my PhD and my MBA, and be like, okay, I completely understand this. I love this. It's in the life sciences. I can really make a difference. It was in HPV space. So very exciting to be able to invest and really make an impact on this space that is very impactful for women, the HPV space. So now about 12 years later, they're still going on. I think they're in Series D. I can never remember how many letters they have, but doing really, really well. They're in this San Francisco Bay Area and doing Antiva Biosciences is their name. So 120 companies later, I'm still doing it. Craziness. And we have about 7 exits, 1 IPO, and I also invested in a SPAC. So I only invest in female-led businesses, period, and also diverse founders. It is a better business decision because we know that diverse leaders actually outperform their male counterparts, and also that you know, if you look at all the data, I have it all, like, I'm a data girl, right? My PhD is serving me well. Actually, female founders exit faster, right? They're more efficient, they're more capital efficient. That's the business side of it. There's a lot of other data that we can go into the business side, but it's the impact piece, right? For me as a scientist, I only saw myself in a sea of men as a scientist, and again, also as a commercialization analyst. I started about 4 or 5 companies when I was getting my MBA, and I just realized that I really wanted to support the female founders, especially the technology founders that are growing businesses. And when I was able to become an angel investor because my father passed away and had an inheritance. And at that time, I knew I was going to be able to work until the day I die, but I can use my commercialization analyst brain. I can use my PhD brain. I can use my MBA brain and make an impact. So I activated my capital and started investing in a specific founder that I knew that I could really impact her. I could impact her business at the seed stage and be that investor that really makes her scale. So very exciting. And then of course, like, we can go into more of it. I'm also the initial fund manager of San Diego Angel Conference that John Seacrest was able to work with Misty Rusk down in San Diego and launch it a couple of years ago. We're in Fund 4. I'm doing great things with being able to invest in other fund managers. So I've invested in now 11 emerging fund managers over the years. So very exciting to see that, and especially in San Diego, being able to have that grow. So your ecosystem is super exciting. So that's me. I'll let that go on to whoever you want to go next, Janine.
Great. Well, thanks, Sylvia. I told you she was amazing.
Thank you.
With so many companies. So Catherine, why don't you tell us your story about how you got into angel investing and why you do this? What did it do for you?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to John and your team for inviting me this evening. Actually, I should thank Janine. And I also, just listening to Sylvia and Janine, I got into investing with these great women. And it's just so much fun to hear their stories and be part of their story also. And I'm really happy to meet Megan. So, and hopefully we get to meet some other time where since we're both in Seattle, not in little rectangles. So, the rectangle thing is getting kind of old here. Anyways, I've been an angel just for about the same amount of time as Janine. I started out with Fledge. You may know, for those in Seattle may know of Fledge. And somebody asked me if I'd be interested in being a mentor. I am a civil engineer. And because of that, I kind of can relate to Sylvia in being in a world of men. I think the number, when I graduated from college many years ago, there were about 16% women in civil engineering, and I don't think it's moved at all. So I've always been around lots of men. And I had to stand out, and I had to be, as one of my good friends always said, I had to be an A student rather than a C student. So it seems that at least in engineering, men can get by with being C students in engineering, but women could never get by with that. So I have done land use planning. I have run a nonprofit in agriculture. My love is land, and how do we use land, and then how do we use land now in investing. So it's not just the land in investing, but how do we change the world to be better? So the environment is one of my passions. Agriculture is one of my passions. And then obviously, or maybe it's not obvious, but it's so important that how to bring more people into this community, not people that just look like me with the skin tone that I have, because we need to expand our communities to be more diverse, and it makes us stronger. It just makes our whole economy stronger, our city stronger. So I want to be part of that. So after being part of Fledge, Looney asked me, well, do you want to invest? I don't know enough information yet. I'm not going to take my money and start investing. And that's the engineer in me wanting to get all the details. And so he introduced me to Janine, and I became an investor in Next Wave Impact. And I did jump into Next Wave Impact with 2 feet into the deep end of the pool. I did a ton of the due diligence. I've continued to be part of that with the Founders of Color Showcase. And I also joined E8 here in Seattle, and have been part of that too. I know there's some E8 folks here. So it's been a real journey. I think it's that sense of excitement about helping create the future. And so that's why I've participated in the angel world.
Great. Thanks so much, Catherine. Really appreciate that. And I realize I should probably explain a little bit about how Next Wave works. So Next Wave had 10 women, Sylvia and I were 2 of them, who were quote unquote the lead investors, and then 89 other women who put their money on the table. And we raised $4.5 million. The lead investors had the responsibility for doing all the sourcing of the deals, for leading due diligence teams, for making the investment decisions. And we also split. We invested in 2.5 years. We invested in about 15 or 16 companies. We did follow-on funding for a large number of them. And we split those companies between the leads to track and follow. And we have quarterly update meetings with the entire membership. The limited partners, people like Catherine, were able to be as involved in that process or not as they wanted. They could choose to just put their money on the table and be told at the end of some period of time, here's how much you made, or they could identify companies and tell us about them and get them in the deal flow. They could participate every month. We had 2 founders who would present their companies to the membership. They could listen to those. They could be on due diligence teams. They could learn how to do diligence at the sides of women who had done it before, and they could opine on our investment decisions. So they were able to get very, very involved. Next Wave did not have a follow-on fund, but there is another company called Portfolia, which uses a very similar model, and that one still accepts women's money. The cool thing about it is you can get into Portfolia if you're an accredited investor for a $10,000 minimum amount. So for $10,000, you can learn how to be an angel with other women, and you can also end up having that $10,000 invested in about 8 companies. So just so that you understand what we're talking about when we reference Next Wave. So with that, Megan, could you please tell us a little bit about your story, and please include the F-bomb group and why you did that and where you hope that's going.
I always drop F-bombs when I talk. It's nice to see you all, nice to see so many familiar faces, and nice to meet those of you that I'm just meeting for the first time here. Thanks for having me. So I'm a business lawyer, an organizational strategy consultant, and I spent the first couple decades, the first 25 years of my career really working in and around philanthropy and the charitable sector, and had the privilege of working in some leadership roles with some organizations that did pretty great things that we would now call social impact organizations. At the time, we didn't call them that, but really got to be a part of some pretty cool innovation, but that largely relied on philanthropic contributions. And one thing that I came to believe pretty strongly after a couple of decades doing that work is that for the things that I care most about in the world, philanthropy might be necessary, but it will never be sufficient to solve those things. And really that's what led me to start to explore other sectors and to become involved with the business sector, to really stop thinking about this sort of binary model, like nonprofits do good and corporations do bad. I think that there's a lot of this this thinking that is very either or, right? You can either do good in the world or you can do well. So I really started challenging my own thinking around that about 12 years ago, about a dozen years ago or so. And then recently, I would say probably during the pandemic, about the beginning of the pandemic, is when I realized that I'd been the lawyer on a number of really cool deals. I had played just about every role that you could play, except for the role of investor. So I'd been a lawyer, I'd been an advisor, I'd been the founder out raising money. I had mentored people through raising money and building really cool organizations and businesses, but I had never put my own money where my big fat mouth is. So I started doing that. And so I'm the newest of this group of women to be investing, and it's only been a little over a year since I wired my first investment. How I look forward to talking a little bit more about how we each sort of approach that. But for me, my wife and I, we built our wealth together. So we make decisions together about how we want to leverage that wealth to create the world that we want to see. So we made a plan, and then once we had a plan, we're pretty intentional about it. And so it was a little over a year and a half ago that I made that first investment. Since then, we have invested in 4 VC funds, 7 early stage companies, and then 1 quasi VC company that's more of a crowd fund. And I participated in SAC 20. So that's the most recent conference that just ended last fall, which was a really great experience. And F-Bomb Breakfast Club. So along this journey, I, a few years ago, was in the process of building a business law firm. Corporate law is another space, not unlike civil engineering, that can be very male dominated. But I was building a business law firm specializing a lot in corporate governance. And at the same time, I was working on an idea that I had for just a little app. It was just a passion project, a side project. I happen to love bike racing and find it really frustrating how hard it is to watch professional bike racing from the US. And if you want to watch women's pro cycling, it's even harder. So I had an idea for an app that would make it easier to stream and follow the women's pro tour. And it kind of grew and grew, as startups sometimes do, and it became what ultimately was a streaming media company that sought to be the first full streaming media channel focused on women's sports. And I ran that for a while, including running it into the ground, which was an amazing experience. But while I was building a business law firm and finding myself, building a startup, what I found is that I was constantly looking for information about how to. I had so many questions about scale. And when I would show up in a room and often be the only woman or one of few women in the room, I just faced sort of constant patronizing, lots of gatekeeping, lots of like, good for you, lady, for doing that thing. It was a horrible experience. And when I talked to other women who are also building companies in male-dominated spaces, I found that it was really a common experience. And so the F-Bomb Breakfast Club was born solely because I was looking for space to talk with other women about how to scale our companies without having to cut through all of that to get to the good stuff, to get to the information. So a little over 5 years ago, I said, I will provide the space, I'll provide coffee and donuts. All you have to do is get up early, because once the business day starts, I do not have time, then to be networking. I'm not a lady who lunches. We got to get this shit done before the business day starts. And so I hosted a meeting on the first fucking Friday of every month at the Ass Crack of Dawn for 5 years straight. And we just tied a bow on that. We'll do something else with the F-Bomb Breakfast Club going forward. But it grew to a community of 5,000 female founders and women business owners who really look to each other for support and help growing really badass companies.
Thank you so much, Megan. There's so much that you said there that I could jump on. And there's one thing in particular, you talked about how hard it was as a female to raise money and capital. And I think that's really true. One of the things that I've also come to know, I know we're talking about angel investing and equity investing, but I've also gotten really interested in debt, in private debt and alternative forms of financing, because what I've learned is just a tiny percentage of the new businesses that form each year are actually equity appropriate. Most of them are not. They're never going to be that unicorn, and or they're started by founders who actually don't want to sell. They want to build a business, grow a business, live the business, and they have a really hard time getting capital too. So there is a movement afoot to try to come up with alternative financing strategies for those kinds of deals. And I think that's really important as well. So, and then the other thing I just wanted to mention, you talked about how you became aware that you'd been in the philanthropy world for so long, that we talk often about there's the pocket of money that we have for doing well financially and getting a financial return, and there's the pocket of money that we have for doing good. And usually those two never mix. And what I've learned in my own journey is we can have both. We can have awesome financial return, and we can be doing great things in the world. As women, I know there are men on this call too, but I got to put in the plug for women. Ladies, we're going to control the majority of money in this country by 2030. So if we start stepping up to the power that we have around our money, we can literally change the economy by the way we invest our money. And I don't think that most women are aware of that.
I think the majority clicked over the 50% mark 2 years ago.
I'm not sure. There's different.
Think we're already there. I can find a reference for you. But I think we're already there. We just have to decide, right?
Right. You're right. And it's going to be over 2/3 by 2030, according to McKinsey & Company. We already make up almost half of the 45 millionaires that are in the country. So we have a tremendous, tremendous power. So given that, I mean, Sylvia, in your comments, you said that you invest exclusively in female entrepreneurs. I pretty much invest almost exclusively in female entrepreneurs. I'd love to hear from Catherine and Megan. I know Catherine has a broader view. So Megan, what is your choice as you look at an entrepreneurial team? Do you side toward women or do you not do that?
I think that's such a great question. I don't exclusively invest in women, but if I'm looking at a company that has a team that is all male, I am highly suspicious that they actually have what they're going to need to build the company they say that they want to build. For me, what I care about is I look at the company. Is it solving a problem that I personally care about? Is like threshold question. I have to care about the thing. And then I look at the team and ask, is it a team that is just insatiably curious? If they already think they have all of the answers, they're not the right team for me. But if they're really curious and they're humble enough to know that whatever idea they're working on is probably going to evolve a lot, over the next couple of years, then that becomes a team that I'm interested in being a part of. But diversity is incredibly important. Of the first 12 investments that we did, not all of, I want to say 9 out of 12 or female founders, but not all of them. But I think, one thing, if we go back to some of the stats that you shared in the beginning, something that just really stands out for me is if you look at the Fortune 500 companies right now, if you look at the companies around the globe that dominate our daily experience, our daily existence on this planet, it's like, we know what the Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerbergs of the world can do. I'm kind of curious to see what kind of world we could build if we bet on somebody else. And so I am looking for somebody else. I am not looking to match the pattern of some of the companies that have really gone big in recent years.
Thanks, Megan. So Catherine, I know you have a nuanced perspective on this as well. How do you decide and how do you look at the teams?
I would say that I'm similar to Megan in the sense that, but as I was preparing for today, I realized that 2 of the companies that I've invested in, one through Next Wave and then one independently, are both female scientists. And those are the 2 that are super exciting to me. But the other thing that I've done is by investing and helping, working with Looney with Fledge, is that he has done a bunch of work in Africa also. And so, it's these perhaps unknown or underperforming environments that get me really curious. And when I was a mentor for Fledge, it was both men and women who I was mentoring at that time. This was before COVID, of course. And I found that there's a lot of go-gettedness, I guess is the way I would describe it, in both the men and the women in the countries that Looney had companies coming and needing mentoring. So I've also, and this kind of jumps into a later question, one of the ways that I have also participated in the startup community is being a coach or a mentor for the University of Washington and the Seattle University entrepreneurship programs, the accelerator programs there. And what's interesting is there was a company that I was a mentor for that was run by a woman. And, I was surprised when I was the only technical person on that team because it was a technical idea. And, I didn't get the respect from that woman. So for me, it's really the diversity and the strength of being able to work with people that aren't necessarily like you, because I know that for myself is that I work best when I am with people who aren't just like me. And I think that makes a stronger team.
That's great. And I love that you bringing up Looney and the work that he's doing through Fledge, because I love him too. And I think Looney is incredibly, he's just very creative and he's always doing new things. The entrepreneurs that he brings from the emerging markets, I have a particular soft spot in my heart for them because I worked for so many years. I worked for over 2 decades in some of the countries that he's bringing these entrepreneurs from. And a lot of times the amount of money they need is very small to grow their businesses. It's very, very small. And he realized that in emerging markets, it's very tough, if not impossible, to find exits. So, I mean, how does a company in Africa exit if they're not, even now, even for very large companies in Africa, there's not the same kind of structure that we have here. And so he had to come up with alternate ways of funding these companies so that they could actually build and grow, repay their investors, and do it without having to have an exit or a liquidity event. So super interesting. So Sylvia, like me, you invest only in women. So say a little bit about that. Why have you made that choice?
Yeah, thank you for that. So I do want to kind of clarify, I do invest in BIPOC founders. So the males that are on my cap table, well, not cap table, on my portfolio, they're coming from that group. And it's funny because they are seeking a female investor at times, or an investor that really speaks what they want to do in this world, and is to have diversity on their leadership. They want diversity on their cap table. So it's been very interesting to have those conversations. As a Latina, it doesn't look like it, but I am from Caracas, Venezuela. So I really look at the Latinas out there, Latinos out there, definitely love talking to them. And we have the same sort of thought processes about wealth as well. So it's kind of interesting and know about capital markets. So why do I invest in that? There's 2 reasons, right? There's one, it's a better business decision, right? If you look at a lot of reports out there, I'm a total data girl, so sorry, I'm gonna go deep there, is that women outperform their male counterparts by about 67%, 63%. That is from, and I'm fuzzy today, so give me 1 second, is from the 10-year report of, somebody knows about it, but I will get it for, what was that? Anyways, no matter. Also women get to exit faster. So I think that I have it all in I was looking at my article. Women get to exit about 6, yeah, here it is. The median in 2018 was time to exit was about 7 years for either gender. And in 2021, time to exit for women-founded companies decreased to 6.6 years and increased to 7.7 for all years for all other US companies. So it's a better business decision. You get to exit faster. Again, we've just talked about like not all women want to exit, and not all companies need to exit. So we can go all meta that way, but let's not go down that way. It's about the data that shows that women do outperform. They are more capital efficient, so that their teams work better. They're about diversity. They're about really making an impact on this world. And I also find that a lot of female and BIPOC founders are really aligned to impact. I am an impact investor. Every single investment that I've done is impact driven. So I feel like that's another piece of why it's important for me to invest in diverse leadership teams. And then lastly is because as a scientist, I do see the dearth. I do want to make an impact on this world. I don't want the next generation to go through what we did. I went from being an investor, 12 years ago, that we were about at 9-10% of all angel investors were women, to now about 25%. What? That's amazing, right? And there's data out there that shows that women investors invest twice as much into female-led businesses. Wow. And lo and behold, the amount of female and entrepreneurs that receive funding in that angel round has increased at the same rate, from about the teens, single digits to teens, all the way to about 24, 25, 27% in the last kind of decade. So we've seen this impact, this next wave, right, of investors who care about diversity, who care about female founders or BIPOC founders or diverse founders, and it's making a difference. It's making a difference to make this world a better place. So that's why I invest in diverse leadership teams. So hopefully that was what was good.
That's great. So Sylvia, I actually have a question for you. So I realize that we are seeing more money going to female founders and diverse founders in the angel stage. But what happens when those companies are going up to the next level and they're hitting the brick wall or the ceiling that used to exist at the angel stage? So maybe the angel stage is getting better, but maybe those later stages are not so much better.
Yeah, and I know that John had mentioned in the chat way at the very beginning that your stat of 2% of VC dollars goes to female entrepreneurs. That's VC. So we're looking at Series A. So you have pre-seed, seed, seed plus, Series A, B, C, D, E, and VC can go between seed. Well, some VCs go down to pre-seed because that's their investment thesis all the way through. But Janine, you bring up a really important point. Thank you, John, for putting in the chat all the progression of all of the rounds. So yes, there is a huge fall off from angel investors really making sure that they are investing in the founders they want to see in the world and the impact they want to see in the world. But we really do need to have more Series A, more VCs investing in more female founders. And I want to also echo what Catherine was saying, is that I'm seeing, especially in the last year and a half, 2 years, is that female founders that are technical founders, that are scientists, are having an incredibly difficult time for investment, because those early stage VC funds that are saying, oh my gosh, we want to make a difference in this world, they're like, let's go easy tech, because like how Megan says, it's like, oh, good girl, you did the SaaS platform. Nothing wrong with SaaS platforms. I love SaaS platforms. But there is also this wave of saying, okay, what about these amazing scientists that are founders? Let's invest in them. I feel like that's the next wave of really pushing into VC, because there are angels that are putting money down into companies the example that I have is Aquacycle for San Diego Angel Conference, and also Next Wave Impact Fund, really making sure that us as angels have a duty, people. We have a duty to be able to have conversations with entrepreneurs and help them get past that. Have conversations with institutional investors or investors that are like, hey, we would love to talk to angel investors. Talk to them, right? Get into the room with them so that we can move that forward. But again, like Janine, you bring up the thing that boils my blood every single day is okay, we've done such great work in the last 12 years as female angel investors. We have more work, but let's move that forward. And the more that we can invest and reinvest and talk about it and be their champions, that's what's going to really help their trajectory.
That's great. So we have talked about the fact that all of us who are currently have the floor are making decisions about investing in diverse teams, which I think is really something that I've seen across many, many women that I know as angel investors. Not all women, obviously, and I know men who do this too. So I'm not saying it's all one or all the other from a gender perspective or from a racial perspective. But I do see that there is a tendency for more women to make this kind of choice. I'd like to ask the three other women that I'm talking with right now, are there other things you see in terms of ways that women make different investment decisions around their angel investing? And then let's talk about this a little bit, and then let's throw it open to the whole room and let others come into the conversation. Sylvia, you're shaking your head. You want to comment on that? And then I'll have Megan and Catherine say something as well.
Well, I think I've taken a lot of the floor, that I think that women do have, I think that when we really feel committed to investing, we really sit beside that entrepreneur. I find that over and over and over again. So we really care about that entrepreneur, make sure that they have the resources around them. Not that men don't do it. I'm just saying historically what I've seen is that. And secondly is that how we have strengths of empathy. Right? It's always seen as like the bias is, oh, you have empathy, that's bad. It is not bad, it is great, right? To be able to sit alongside an entrepreneur and walk them through. Those are the things that I see as female investors. And of course, we make different decisions financially and like our portfolio. And I think Megan and Catherine can go into that or whatever you guys want to talk about. But I think for me, I see over and over again that empathy makes such a difference, and you can make a difference at that seed stage for that entrepreneur. And like honing in on that is what that female angel investor does incredibly well.
So let me,
Go ahead. No, Catherine, please.
Well, I was thinking about what Sylvia just said and the question Janine asked, and you know, it's not always just about the money there. And when I think about my whole career and what I've done, you know, in land use and running a nonprofit, and I have to have passion behind what I'm working on or what I invest in. And I've got to see that it's going to make a difference in the world, which is what has made me an impact investor. I know it was 15 years ago that I said to my husband that we needed to start thinking about social responsibility investing. And so we looked specifically at that time for a financial advisor who could help us out with that. Because when you have the ability to have financial wherewithal to make a difference in the world, it's not just about me, it's about the community I live in, the world I live in. And of course, when I invest, I don't want it to be charity. I'll do that with my philanthropy, but I do have that sense of, and when I think again of the two investors, one of them is AquaCycle. I mean, I'll never forget being on that due diligence team and just going, yes, this is it. I mean, I could just feel it. And then there was another company that I was part of the due diligence team on that's run by a woman. And it was just like, and because of my experience, I'm like, yes, this is it. This is, I just, you just feel it in your gut, and you feel it in the intensity of going, this could make a huge difference. And it's I don't know, it's kind of exciting. That's why I do it.
I agree with you. It's super exciting. It's super exciting to see some of these things that women are building and creating. But Megan, please, I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, I wanted to add a couple of thoughts. So I, of course, have only been investing, like I said, a little over a year and a half now since I've been investing my own money in early stage startups. So I'm going to speak from limited experience, but I talk a lot with other women who are also kind of new on their angel investing journey. And there's some common experiences I noticed that we have. One is that we hear a lot of people talk about like women do this differently. as if we were somehow born doing this differently. I don't think these things are inherent to gender or sex. I think this is about a lifetime of conditioning in which we have been bombarded with messages about women not being good with money, and that, you know, we're not good at math and we're not good at numbers and we should let our husbands make the decisions. Like, you know, you can just think of all of these characters from popular culture, or, you know, media that have reinforced that our entire lives. Because of that, the data shows, study after study shows, my experience, the observations I have of other women shows that women are often less confident when we're making a financial decision, that we take longer to make financial decisions, that we, you know, even deciding to become angel investors, we're waiting longer to do that. None of those things are because we're women. It's because, like I said, it was sort of this lifetime of conditioning. So I really love talking with people about that and sort of trying to bust that apart and encourage us to be a lot more courageous with our money, and to talk about it. But one thing that I have observed, and I don't know if this is about conditioning, if this is nurture or nature, I don't know, but my experience so far tells me that when I am investing alongside women, women lead with questions, and in my experience, the men I invest with tend to lead with assumptions. In my experience, in the group investing that I've done so far, in the short amount of time that I have, men don't love silence. They will fill it immediately with their thoughts. And the women I invest with are a lot more patient to sit back, think for a minute before sort of thoughtfully diving in. And like, it's limited experience, so it could just be about the rooms that I've been in so far, but it makes me inclined to want to invest with women who approach investing with curiosity. Curiosity is something that is incredibly important to me, and how I try to approach a whole lot of things in life. So I'm more inclined to invest with other people who are curious.
That's great. I also think, and I think men probably do this too, but most of the women that I know have learned to do angel investing along with other women, in groups of other women. And it's been a really fun, supportive way to do it. I think that in my experience in those groups, the women are super collaborative and really support each other. There's not a lot of feeling of competition going on. It's like, oh, you don't know that? Here, let me tell you how to do that. I'll teach you. We'll go offline and I'll teach you how to do it. So it's been super supportive environment. And I actually think learning in groups is such a great thing that I've actually started a nonprofit now with another woman. It's called Invest for Better. And we're actually putting women together in investment clubs to teach them how to invest all of their money. And to invest all of that money in ways that are meaningful to them and that create a better world, and start with their even starting with their cash. So I really am a huge proponent of learning together. I think investing, any kind of investing, whether you're talking about the traditional approach or you're talking about angel investing, it's a long uphill journey. It is not a sprint, it's a marathon, it's a lifelong adventure. And it's a lot of work for anyone who's got the job, got the home, got the kids, got the cooking, got the, you know, the story. And being able to do that with other people who can help you, support you, and split the work, I just think is such a much more powerful way to learn and build that confidence. And in terms of the numbers, for what you were saying, I learned recently that 90% of articles finances money, 65% of those articles tell us that investing is super hard, and 73% of articles written for men tell them how to grow their wealth and invest it. Only 9% of us believe that we are better investors than men. We don't have confidence, but data shows that when we do invest, and I'm talking writ large here, we outperform men. In fact, there is a recent study by Fidelity. They looked at 5.2 million accounts over a 10-year period and found that women consistently outperformed by at least 40 basis points a year. So ladies, we got it, we can do this, and it's time to tell your daughters, it's time to tell your friends, it's time to tell your mothers that we have the ability to do this. And not only that, but angel investing is super fun. So with that, unless any of Megan, Catherine, or Sylvia, you have any last comment you want to make, I'd love to open this up to the audience and have them put questions in. And I did see something here that somebody had asked, and whether or not, if you can answer this question, it's a little bit different than angel investing, but understanding how women CEOs think differently or make different decisions when they're building their companies. So do Megan or Sylvia, Catherine, any of you have thoughts on that? How female CEOs maybe are different?
Well, I want to hear Megan's thoughts too, because she built this huge network of wonderful entrepreneurs. But what we find at Ad Astra, we have a boot camp that we run every quarter for female entrepreneurs. And of course, Stella Labs, a business accelerator for only now 12 years that we've been able to help women go through and launch and scale their businesses. I feel like, you know, the bias is what really stops a lot of female entrepreneurs. It's internal bias, and as Megan talked about, like the conditioning that we hear consistently throughout our lives. So at Ad Astra, and how we attack, like kind of challenge it, is to say to the entrepreneurs to neutralize that bias. You know what's a bias in the room, and neutralizing it by talking differently. I know that that's not sometimes seen as something that we should be doing, right? But understanding what the bias is, understanding the bias within yourselves, like analysis paralysis, like the imposter syndrome. How do you neutralize that? And that is the power that you have. You have superpowers that you can come into a room. So those are the kinds of things that we talk about. Women CEOs do think differently. There's these trends of like not thinking about the unicorn, but the zebras in the world. That's kind of what Janine was alluding to earlier, right? So, and you know, even like a company like Aquacycle, they're looking at debt deals just because they're thinking about, okay, how do we build a company that we can allocate the money that's coming in from an investor, angel investors and VCs, the most capital efficient way. But let's say the other stuff that's like building out their core technology, could we actually fund it in a different way? They're thinking creatively like that, asking different types of questions so that they can build a better mousetrap or a better business that has traditionally never been thought of, because it's always like, and VC, and this, and go forwards. So yes, there's, I think female CEOs do build businesses differently. Megan, I don't know if you have any other things thought.
Yeah, I think those are such great points. There's three things that I would add to that in my experience. These are three things that I really love about women as CEOs. In my experience, far more collaborative. And so hierarchy is important. And when it comes to corporate governance, at the end of the day, there's a hierarchy of authority and liability, sure. But women CEOs tend, in my experience, to be just much more collaborative, particularly in those early stages of a company, in terms of like really building a team around them, getting lots of input, recognizing people's contributions. It's one thing I love. A second thing is that capital efficiency, which you mentioned before, which is really about being able to do the most with a dollar. Like in my experience, women CEOs are really great with that. And then the third is, and when I share this one, I just instantly start thinking of counterexamples, but that in my experience, women CEOs tend to have higher EQs and ability to recognize the things that are not their strengths so that they can go and find that to complement them. And so I can just think of so many examples of, just this week, I got an update from a founder from a company that I'm invested in through a syndicate. It was an update. And when she was sharing the what's not going on right now, led with, I'm worried that I'm the bottleneck right now. And here's why, and here's how I'm solving that. And I can't think of a single time that I've gotten a similar report from a male founder or CEO who would lead with what he's not doing great yet. And so that's just something that I really appreciate.
Wonderful. So a question, how can we help the women CEOs that we invest in to raise the next round of funding? It seems to take a long time to find the right fund, family office, strategic. So if any of the three of you have thoughts on that, I think Dana would appreciate it.
I do have thoughts. I want to make sure, Catherine, again, it's like the duty of the angel investor. I'm constantly looking at the next level because I know my portfolio, right? I know my portfolio. I know the horizon that I want to invest in. So I'm consistently looking at Series A, even Series B funds and VC funds that I can connect with as an investor, either at meetings or an article that they share on LinkedIn. I'm consistently trying to follow up with them, making sure that they know that angels do exist. I know that they do know that, right? And making those inroads so that when that entrepreneur comes, I can make it so much more easier for her to get in front of that VC saying, you know what, VC, I know exactly what you're going to be investing in, and I'm not going to send you crap. I'm going to send you the right female entrepreneur for your investment thesis. They love that, right? And again, unfortunately, Dana, it is like a long time, and it is one by one by one, but we're still not in that like volume play, right? We can't just say, okay, volume wise, listen to us. It's that those constant conversations. And as I always say, trust is the most valuable currency of investing. So if that Series A investor trusts me to bring them the right deal, not all deals, but the right deal, they're going to open up and say, come on in, entrepreneur, let's have a conversation. Right. So I think that that's the approach that I do. Of course, I'm Latina. I'm very family oriented. I want to talk to people. Right. So that's just my like thesis of growing a network. And I think that that's a work that a lot of investors can do, is say, what do I do really good? What are my strengths? If my strength is talking to people, talk to a bunch of like next level people. If more like I'm a data person, then write some articles about data and saying, hey, you know what, let's talk about female investors and what's that pipeline and helping that pipeline. So I would say that that's what I have found so far. Oh, and the last thing is getting on a call with the entrepreneur, with that investor, saying, you know what, maybe it's nice to have a conversation between the two investors and that entrepreneur in the room, and you be their champion in the moment.
I think that's really, go ahead.
Oh, so I just, hearing Janine and Sylvia talk about this, because I met both of them through Next Wave Impact. And what I realized is that the Next Wave Impact model was absolutely amazing. Just, I learned so much. I made colleagues and friends through the network all across the country and around the world, because some of the women who were part of it were in other parts of the world. And, in a lot of ways, I want that to happen again, but it's not, at least in that form. But I continue to look for that because I am fiscally conservative with my money. I'm an engineer. I mean, that's what engineers have to be, is fiscally conservative, because we want to make sure that there's money there to finish a project. And so I don't get swayed easily by, just niceties or, anything like that. And so I want to go to the data. I want to go to the stats. I want to see the product. And so I continue to look for those opportunities. And so to Dina's question, I think there needs to be more opportunities where women come together and pool funds to make these types of opportunities happen. There is something special about working with other women to solve problems and to decide how and where to invest.
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, one of the things I harp on every chance I get, so I'm going to take this chance too, is I think it's really important for part of what was brilliant about the model that Portfolio is now following and that Next Wave was based on, was that women could get in for $10,000 and they could have 8 investments, 8 good investments. Of the investment level was $100,000 that those funds invest in. So it's like a strong investment, 8 of them. It starts to build a true portfolio of investments. Is what you need in order to be a successful angel. And $10,000 for women was like an okay thing for them to do. Because, when I was talking to women about joining Next Wave, I don't know that we'll have time to get to this, but one of the things I had wanted us to talk about is how we talk to our partners. Because I personally, I have my own money. The way I'm set up with my husband, he has his money, I have my money. It's completely 100% separate. I can do whatever the heck I want with my money, but that is not the case for a lot of women. A lot of women have money that is combined with the husband. The husband gets to have a say, or their partner. The partner gets to have a say over how that money is invested. And some of the women that I talked to said, you know, 10,000, that's small enough amount of money that's my play money. I can take that and I don't even have to talk to my partner about it. I don't have to bring that up at all. And so we need ways that women can invest at very small levels. The problem is that the funds that allow you to invest at very small levels, like Next Wave, which was 4.5 million, and like the predecessor to it, which was $1 million fund, there is no money in a fund of that size to pay anyone. And so everyone that worked on Next Wave, including the woman who was the general manager and put the whole thing together, basically did it on a volunteer basis. That is completely unsustainable for anyone. So I really wonder if there's an opportunity for some foundation, some organization that cares about this stuff to help enable these funds and just pay the salary of the person that runs the fund, because the person is never going to make the money off of the fund. So could we just start setting up some $1 million, $5 million funds that get people in at low cost, teach them how to do this, and just underwrite somehow the cost of the person running the fund?
I mean, I'd love to speak to that, because I know we only have a few minutes left, but there are lots of ways that women can get involved investing now at a low buy-in. So participating in SAC, I just have to plug it. If you have not participated as an investor, $5,000 minimum investment, 3-month hands-on intensive learning experience with others. Caitlin, I would love for you to wave your hands in the air. This is Caitlin, the founder of Brainspace, who SAC 20, my cohort, invested in. We're so proud of her and her company. You know, back to your last question, how are we going to help her raise the VC funds she's going to need down the road? Well, hopefully we're going to tap the network of all the other people who've come through SAC before, right? Like that's a pretty amazing network. A lot of the angels who've come through have gone on into venture capital and have funds and are part of funds now. So, you know, hopefully we can keep tapping that. But SAC is a great way. I'm an investor with Florida Funders, which is another angel group. One of the ways that they make the business model work is that they spin off sidecars from their VC funds. They've got a large professionally managed fund. They offer deals to the angels in their network. They're able to syndicate, so people's salaries are paid by what the fund itself is doing. And a number of funds here locally do that too. So Graham & Walker, another great example. Invest in Graham & Walker as an LP. You're going to have an opportunity to invest in some of the sidecars that spin out of that. And then lastly, AngelList is a great place to get started if you're new and you want to start just looking at a high volume of deals. On AngelList, you can find syndicate leads who lead serial syndicates, meaning they syndicate deals over and over and over again. Find some who have a thesis similar to yours, that have value similar to yours, and join that syndicate. You'll start getting a high volume of deal flow and you just get so much practice. Many of those you can invest as little as $1,000, right? So you're not going to see a big return. Your whole portfolio isn't going to be a bunch of $1,000 investments. But if you start there, you will get such great exposure and experience and build your network of other investors. You don't have to wait until, when we were talking, Janine, I told you, I think sometimes people think they have to wait till they have Google money. Right. You don't have to wait until you have Google money to start investing if you are an accredited investor. There are ways to get started at a lower dollar amount until you build really the experience to bring you to a place where you're making much bigger investments.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. You're absolutely right. I will still stay on my soapbox once in a while, but I love your response. And I love that you provided all of those other opportunities for people. And yes, definitely to SAC. I think it's a great idea. I'm actually thinking that I should do it this year too. I don't know if I'm going to have the time, but it sounds like such a great program. So
you should.
I know I should. It's like, when am I going to fit that into my life? So I'm thinking.
And my point was and not not instead of, to your point. I absolutely agree with what you're saying.
I hear you and I appreciate that. So I think that we are out of time. I'm sure John Seacrest, if folks want to stay on, you might let them do that, but I do want to let the three ladies who were on the panel go. And I just want to thank you both, John Dex and John Seacrest, again, for having us and letting us have this conversation about women as angels. And thanks to Sylvia, Megan, and Catherine for all of your great thoughts and for being willing to spend your evening this way. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so very much. I've been putting a bunch of stuff into the chat. If you click on the 3 dots on the bottom of the chat, you can download the chat, and that has a bunch of links to many of the things that people reference. Specifically, the thing I point people to is the Assure Labs model that allows groups of 20 people to raise a little tiny fund really quickly. That's a mechanism where groups who are focused on something can make something happen pretty easily. I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions, or if people have things they want to put on the table, glad to have that happen.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
great to see you, Sylvia.
I know, John, it is nice. Bye, everyone.
So
Thanks so much.
I would love it,
Thank you.
Sylvia, if you have a conversation with Elizabeth Cross-Nickel, my APIS health program manager, I think that would be interesting to both of you.
Yeah, no, I'm willing to talk to anybody about, growing angel networks, VC funds, anything, and entrepreneurs out there. There are angels that do want to help you and who want to see you at the very early stages. So don't get discouraged. And SAC, and of course STAC. I know STAC. I should also join SAC as well. I joined Angel NV last year. I was angeled out, angel conferenced out last year. But entrepreneurs know that this angel conference is so great for you to just even walk through it with other angels and get involved with the network. That's so important, right? Because as Janine said, it is a marathon instead of just a sprint. So get on that marathon and connect with us. We're here to help.